Well, despite losing to the Rams to fall into second place all by themselves in the NFC West, we got some answers from the Seattle Seahawks in Los Angeles on Sunday. Specifically, how would Mike Macdonald and that defense fare against Sean McVay and that high-flying offense against a red-hot quarterback in Matthew Stafford, playing as well as anyone in the league? We got answers there, but probably more questions coming out of that game. An injury to the offensive line. What's Grey Zabel's status? And how will that offense function moving forward with Sam Darnold's turnover problem? Over the last 4 games, 8 turnovers, 7 of them interceptions. Of course, the 4 on Sunday, 2 of them leading directly to short field scores for the Rams. Needs to be corrected. There are other issues at stake as well. To help me answer those questions, actually, he'll be answering them. Gregg Bell, the outstanding beat reporter, longtime beat writer for the Seahawks, working for the Tacoma News Tribune, also KJR Radio, joins me next to break it all down. This is Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
If you would subscribe to the channel, it's the best way to support me as a full-time independent content creator. It doesn't cost you anything except for a mouse click, and lets YouTube know that maybe some more people would want to watch the content. Also, check out that website you see at the bottom, nwforever.com. That'll take you to my Patreon, where you can get all of my content all under one roof: video, audio, Substack writing, Discord, Seahawks, Mariners. Check that out if you would, please. Also, shout out to my buddies at Fast Fashion Brewing, Matt and Randy Storm. Recently named their Bavarian Pilsner, named one of the 20 best craft beers in the nation. They're down on First Avenue, right next door to Hooverville and across the street from Showbox Soto. Check them out if you would, please. All right. Always a pleasure and an honor, frankly, to talk to Gregg Bell. He is the perfect blend of intellectual and also just football knowledge, and his passion for covering the sport. Always enjoy these conversations. It's hard for me to keep them as concise as I need to so that he can go about his day and do the things that he needs to do. But he had a chance to join me today. Here's my conversation with Gregg Bell. All right, Greg. Well, there's really no other place to start than the obvious storyline since the end of that game on Sunday. Let's talk about Sam Darnold. He's one of the best stories in the league through the first 9 weeks. Now he's on a pace to match, or actually break, his all-time record for most interceptions in a season. He's gone 4 straight games now with a pick, 7 picks in his last 4. There's a lost fumble in there too. Loved how he bounced back those last couple drives, gave him a chance to win it at the end. What's your confidence level in his ability to not just bounce back in a wider scheme of things, but also this offense to correct the things that plagued them on Sunday?
Well, Dan, I'd maintain it against the best teams, the Rams and the 49ers, who they still haven't beaten, and they can't win the division until they do. They need to run the ball effectively, consistently, and they need to have Kenneth Walker as the lead back to reduce the burden on any quarterback. It was the same when Geno Smith was here. When Russell Wilson was at his best, he had Marshawn Lynch and then Chris Carson running. The Rams, while they did run the ball, the Seahawks ended up getting 62 yards from Walker. They didn't use him consistently, and the Rams knew that the only way the Seahawks were really going to move the ball was with with Darnold. So they made him hold the ball. And that's the same thing they did when he got 9 sacks in the playoff game last year. You saw the decisions he made. Cooper Kupp was telling me after the game in Inglewood on Sunday that the Rams moved safeties in the box like it was a heavy box 8-man. Then they'd run that safety out. Usually it was Kinchins. They'd run him out, and they'd actually, once the play began, were a lot of times in too high shell, which is what a lot of teams do with Smith-Njigba. But the Seahawks were running plays and routes, and Darnold's initial read was as if it was single high. So I think that contributed to the 4 interceptions as well. He still leads the league in yards per attempt. He still leads the league in plus 10 and plus 20 yard throws because of Smith-Njigba, who still leads the NFL. He just has to reduce the turnovers. Even when they were 7-2, the turnovers were a problem. Yeah. And now he's tied with Tagovailoa Tagovailoa and Darnold are the 2 most turnover guys in the league now. They've tied with 14 turnovers. no matter how the defense plays, no matter what the running game looks like, no matter who's at left guard and center, if they turn the ball over, they're not going to win. And they're still behind the Rams and the 49ers in that regard too.
Saw something similar on Sunday to what we saw week one. The play action pass numbers were lower than they've been in all the other games, and the run pass splits weren't as equal. It feels like maybe Clint Kubiak's overthinking things. He knows the familiarity with those two organizations because the offense comes from the same DNA. In fact, all those guys have worked together before in the past. Do you think it's a case of that he's getting away from who they are on offense against those teams?
Well, they're playing from behind against those teams. The difference in the Rams game on Sunday was they were down right away. I mean, Darnold in the second throw hands them a touchdown, basically. An interception and it's a short field. The Rams scored 21 points, Dan. 2 of them were directly off the interceptions that Darnold gave them in deep in their own end. Their 2 touchdown drives were 3 yards and 25 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could say, now Ernest Jones argued after the game, well, we got to stop them when they do turn it over. Those shouldn't have been touchdowns. We could have kept them to field goals. But it's not a stretch to say with an actual long field and a kickoff or punt drive start for the Rams, they just scored 7 points. And the last time that they were in Seattle last year, McVay's offense only scored 13 points in regulation, plus the 7 points on the 103-yard return by Kitchens that forced overtime, and then they lost in overtime. Let's throw out the JV game the Rams and Seahawks had in January when the Rams didn't have anybody on the field because they'd already clinched everything. The last 2 times McDonald has faced McVay, the Rams have scored 13 points on the Seahawks defense in regulation, and really, without the turnovers and deep in their own end, 7 points driving the length of the field against the defense. So once again, if they aren't chasing that game, they aren't turning the ball over, Kubiak runs the game plan that he was going to run. They run the ball a lot more, probably 20 carries instead of 13 for Kenneth Walker. And now all of a sudden, Darnold isn't all or nothing. And in the turnovers, maybe he doesn't throw the 3rd and 4th interception because they're not throwing the ball 40-plus times. When you chase in the game, then your game plan gets out of whack and your run pass numbers. The previous 2 games, of course, 69-14 or whatever it was in the first half between Washington and Arizona, then Kubiak could run it eventually 46 times against the Cardinals. The second pass of the game on the first drive interception really changed everything for how Seattle wanted to play that game, and they had to chase it the rest of the day.
Is that a blind spot for Kubiak that he just hasn't shown that he can operate an offense when you have to just drop back and throw it around the yard?
Well, I would say that it's not Kubiak, but the offensive line and the Seahawks, the way they're structured and built, can't drop back and throw it every single time. That's when the 49ers and the Rams particularly get after the quarterback, affect the quarterback, and turnovers and sacks happen. I mean, when you're 2nd and 20, you're not going to use – the percentages are really low of extending that drive. And that is time and again what's happened with the Rams and 49ers. They lose the line of scrimmage. They can't establish the run. They end up falling behind in the game, and they chase it. And then they have to throw. And when they have to throw, they get sacked and turn the ball over. In the simplest terms, that's why they haven't beaten the Rams and 49ers in a long time. For all the wonder that Sam Darnold has been, and Jackson Smith-Njigba has been this season, that defense has been this season, and the fact that, yes, they're just 7-3. And the big picture is they should be 8-3 after they play Tennessee this weekend. They still haven't beaten the Rams and 49ers. So what have they really done? Dan, they're not any really further along than they were before they traded Russell Wilson, before they traded Geno Smith, before they fired Pete Carroll. They're second fiddle right now in the division, which means they're going to be on the road if they do get a 10-7 or get into the playoffs as a wild card. Maybe they win the first round with the way the new wild card system is right now, that the 5 seed would play for Tampa Bay, who they already lost to in a shootout. And if they do win the first round game, the second round game would be at a Philadelphia or Detroit or something like that. And then they're really where they've been for most of the last decade, right? So that's the biggest alarm coming out of Inglewood to me is, where are they big picture in the division? And right now they're still behind the Rams and 49ers, which doesn't put them any further than they were before they brought in Kubiak and brought in McDonald and overhauled everything.
What I hear you saying in some respects is it still comes back to that longtime nemesis, the offensive line, was something that's been a problem for 10 years now. And while the improvement there has been striking, just 10 sacks up until Sunday, and Sam Darnold, for the most part this season, has had more time to operate. They spend a first-round pick on Grey Zabel. We'll talk about the injury situation here in a second. Sounds like there's still some work there to be done long-term. Do you sense that in the offseason they'll attack that? They think the answers are on the roster? Or do you think maybe we'll see some aggressiveness in going out and acquiring perhaps a veteran to go with all those young guys up there?
I think they're going to need a right guard. I'm not sure Anthony Bradford is the long-term answer there. They don't have someone other than Christian Haynes to replace Bradford right now, which is why it hasn't happened yet. Shane Lemieux was an option, and now he's on injured reserve practice squad. So right now they have Bradford. I would expect that to be an upgrade through the draft, or if they, as you said, bring a veteran in, which is with a relatively young line. The line didn't have anything to do with Darnold throwing the 4 interceptions. Darnold's first one had nothing to do with the line. He threw it right to a safety. Kitchen's in the middle of the field, never saw him. The second interception, he got hit as he threw outside to Smith-Njigba, but really the hit didn't affect the decision. He'd already made the decision to throw out there, and he was covered too. Kitchens was standing in the middle of the field like a center fielder catching a line drive on the third interception, which was right down the middle of the field when he tried to go to Arroyo. That had nothing to do with the line either. Now, the fourth interception against the Rams did have to do with the line. He was very concerned. We talked to him after the game about it. They were on the edge of field goal range, down 21-12 with 6 minutes left. He was really aware, and I'm sure Kubiak in the headset in the helmet speaker before the play clock cut down to 15 said to him, just don't take a sack here. Because if you take a sack, then it's a 60-yard field goal instead of a 52-yard field goal. They were at about the 36-yard line or so. And so he was so preoccupied with that, he stepped up in the pocket and tried that ill-advised jump pass to Arroyo. And he said after the game he saw a defensive tackle in front of him and never saw the cornerback actually standing in front of Arroyo already covering him because there was a defensive tackle in his face. He says they should have just dirted the ball. For instead of a sack, it would have been a 4th down at the same line of scrimmage, and then it's a 54-yard field goal and a 1-score game with 6 minutes left. So that's the only one of the 4 interceptions that I saw that the line had something to do with it. There were other times, though. Anthony Bradford, there was a 3rd and 1 that Kenneth Walker ended up getting a first down on in the third quarter when it was 14-9. They ended up kicking a field goal at the end of the drive. Bradford got beat by Kobe Turner, the defensive tackle for the Rams, with a swim move right off the snap. And Bradford just fell on his face, and Turner was standing 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage staring at Walker. Here's why Kenneth Walker should be the number 1 back and take off the let's coast through and the foot issue and all. No, I talked to McDonald about that yesterday, and he says, no, Walker has earned more carries, and here's how. If that was Charbonnet would have been straight into Kobe Turner for a loss of 2, and it would have been 4th down. Walker juked Turner with a fake to the left and cut hard to the right. Turner whiffed at air, and it would have been a touchdown run, except the safety came down hard and tripped up a shoestring tackle with Walker. That play in particular was another example of the line of Kenneth Walker making something out of nothing that his line gave him with missed blocks. All that's to say is, the line is far from a finished product, but a lot of NFL teams could say that.
Right.
The line, they mitigate their line problems, Dan, when they're leading the games like they had been, but it's easy to lead the Cardinals and the Commanders compared to the Rams.
Interesting. You've brought up Cam Kitchen's name so many times. That was a guy that the Seahawks were interested in, did a lot of work on him last year in the draft. I think he was a 30 visit to the VMAC, if I'm not mistaken. Let's talk a little bit more about that Kenneth Walker situation. You wrote about it in the TNT yesterday. He's on pace for 1,000 yards now. He's got that rush, that average yards per rush up to 4.5 yards. Mm-hmm. I've maintained for a while now that maybe he wasn't going to be in the picture in 2026, that he wouldn't be an extension candidate, that he's not the ideal running back for what they want in a running back, and that person might not be on the roster, that ideally they want someone that's a little bit of Zach Charbonnet and a little bit of Kenneth Walker. Is he maybe changing? You said that Mike Macdonald's willing to give him some more touches now. We'll see if that carries over to Sunday. Is he changing their perceptions? Might he be working his way back into the picture beyond this year?
He might be, because I don't think Zach Charbonnet has proven himself worthy of being the number 1 back in this offense. Look, Dan, they have been trying to manage and massage almost literally Walker through 17 games. The foot issue since August, they held him out of all the offseason work. They held him out of a lot of training camp. And they are even now that, and I asked yesterday to McDonald after he told me that, yeah, Walker's earned more touches and more carries. I said, well, how's the foot issue you guys have been managing since August? And he said, well, no back's 100% in week 12. And we're not going to go 100% with a running back anyway. That would be irresponsible for us to do.
Right.
But yes, Walker is, from what he said, from what I understand, McDonald said, Walker is clear of all that and has progressed from that. So you can take off the governor and the managing part of that, and let's see what Walker can do. He's got 7 games left in his contract. So he's ultra motivated. And I think this is his time. It's go time for him for his future. It's go time for the Seahawks to decide if they want to bring him back. You're right. The Todd Gurley contract with the Rams, what it has been half a dozen years ago now, has really spooked the rest of the league. He had $61 million guaranteed, and he got hurt right away. I'd never played under any of that, and they ended up cutting him a year or two later. That contract alone was a reminder that as running backs, their second contracts, let's not devote a ton of money and planning to the future beyond the first contract. I think that's where they've been headed with Walker. Will Charbonnet's lack of productivity change that? Maybe. Is George Holani their answer? I don't think that's their future. He's a special teams player and a good role player. I don't see him as a lead back candidate. And you may be right. The eventual guy may not even be on the roster. The Seahawks have a decision to make. Do they want to invest at the sport's most injured, attrited position, a second contract with Kenneth Walker? And I'd say right now it's pretty inconclusive, pending him getting more carries. And let's see him as a lead back the last 7 games, and maybe they have a decision to make then.
Would certainly help his cause if Grey Zabel could get back in the lineup. Some really good news yesterday. Mike McDonald framed it as day-to-day, although I will say that as we get to know Mike McDonald a little bit more and how he talks about these injuries and how conservative the team is and strategic in some cases and when they bring these guys back, no better week than this one, maybe, to give him a week off if he needs it against a Titans defense that is near the bottom of the league in just about every measurable category. So in his absence, the assumption would be that last year's third-round pick Christian Haynes finally gets a chance to get in there and show us what he can do. He was in there Sunday, but we were all fooled last year too when Anthony Bradford got hurt, and lo and behold, Satawa Lamea leapfrogs Haynes, and he started at right guard and started for the rest of the year. Are they going to hold a competition at that spot this week?
I don't think so, Dan. Mason Richmond, Bryce Cable have done some guard and tackle, but they've also used Richmond as a center at times. They've used Cable as a backup center at times. So those really the only in-house options beyond Christian Haynes. McDonald said Haynes did okay considering the fact he hadn't played all season, just got called up from IR on Saturday, but that he had a lot of things to work on. He, by the way, was effusive in his praise for Oluwatimi. He said he was tremendous in that game, and that it sounded almost surprised at how well he played. And he'll be playing Oluwatimi the next 3 weeks because Sundell will be on injured reserve. I'm with you. I think this is a week to rest the rookie Grey Zabel. I'm not sure they will do that because of how valuable and studly he is and how much he's going to beg himself back to play. But I don't know if there's anyone else beside Christian Haynes they could put there at left guard, and especially in a short week and short turnaround. I would have thrown a parade for the news they got yesterday about Grey Zabel. The season could have really U-turned if that was
didn't see that coming.
Yeah, that when he was down on 2 knees, Dan, in Inglewood with his face mask in the turf, as tough a kid that guy is, I thought he was seriously injured. And then I watched through the binoculars him basically – they were almost carrying him to the sideline into the blue tent and into the locker room. So that's somewhat remarkable that it's not a long-term issue.
Yeah, well, he's a big old farm kid from South Dakota. Of course, he's going to want to get in.
South Dakota, Busch Lights. Yeah. That's right.
So, Josh Jones has played quite a bit of guard in his career, but never saw him taking reps at guard during training camp. Did they just not see him as a guard?
He has played guard in the past, and when they signed him, that was an option. I didn't see him much. I'm trying to remember in training camp if we saw any of Josh Jones at guard. He could do it because he has. And if they truly wanted to make it a competition, I guess that's the guy you'd put in because he has veteran NFL game experience doing it. My hunch is they would never say this, but my hunch is we'll see if we can get through Tennessee with Christian Haynes and then roll back. Hopefully Grey Zabel ready in a week or two.
Yeah. Good opportunity for Haynes to show something. And then I think it gets really interesting if, provided Zabel gets back in the lineup and he's fine, Oluwatimi continues to play well. And then Jalen Sundell comes back off injured reserve. Might he push Anthony Bradford at right guard in that situation?
And that could be, they like Sundell at guard more than anybody else they have on the roster behind the starters to me. That's a possibility. We have been asking about Anthony Bradford for a while, and they basically have said, who else would we put in there? They haven't said that in so many words, but that's kind of the implication while Haynes was on injured reserve. But I'm with you. Oluwatimi could, if he holds his own, but make them think something of Sundell playing right guard.
Meanwhile, Jackson Smith-Njigba just keeps doing his thing. This is shocking to me when they pointed it out on the telecast Sunday, and I had to, go to the web and confirm it. Sure enough, he only needs 158 yards to break the all-time single-season receiving yards record for the Seahawks. That is insane. I noticed something on Sunday though I thought was interesting, and I felt like this. I noticed this early in the game, and then the pass charts from Next Gen Stats confirmed it afterwards. He played almost exclusively on the left side Sunday. It's not something he typically does. If you go back and look at his charts throughout the season, there's some weeks that he plays mostly on the right side, and there's other weeks where it's very, very balanced. The Jacksonville game is a good example of that. But it also seemed like Sam was really staring him down at times. Understandable now that we've heard about what they were doing to him in coverage and how that was kind of making his reads difficult. Only 2 targets to Rashid Shaheed. We were all excited to get him at the trade deadline. Do you feel like Clint Kubiak, I don't even know why I threw his name out there, just the offense in general, that there was a failure to adjust to what the Rams were doing in this game, wasn't there?
There was. And, even if Kubiak calls it, even if he schemes up deep post routes for Shaheed, it's still on Sam Darnold when it's time to make a decision with the ball, where he goes with it. And he still so trusts Smith-Njigba over everybody else, over Kupp, over his checkdowns. Barner got some second and third look catches the other day. But it's still, the preponderance is so toward Smith-Njigba that I'm not sure if he had schemed it any differently if the ball wouldn't have gone where it ended up going anyway. The idea is that Shaheed can be a deep middle threat to make teams think twice about shading a safety over to Smith-Njigba. That you're going to keep a safety on his porch in the middle of the field if you had Shaheed running, zooming post routes behind him. We didn't see that as much against the Rams. We haven't seen that yet because they kept them under wraps against Arizona. When will we see that? And if we see that, and if teams are going to continue to keep a safety over the top and bracket coverage Smith-Njigba, the idea is you're one-on-one in the middle in that post route. Shaheed should be able to win that without a safety at home. I haven't seen that yet. You talk about the adjustment thing. That's an adjustment that I think not only Kubiak, but then Sam Darnold, because you have to throw those a couple times. If he just runs them and they don't throw, and he keeps throwing to Smith-Njigba, they'll keep shading safeties over that way. He's going to have to throw there and make a couple deep 40-plus completions to him before teams are going to change how they've been keeping a safety shading on Smith-Njigba. But hey, Smith-Njigba, he's got 1,150-some yard, whatever it is. He's only 800 yards from the all-time record for a single season, 1,934, right?
He's on pace.
I mean, the way he's gotten 100-yard games, and if Darnold keeps throwing the ball no matter who's covering it, and if he keeps catching passes one-handed like he did down the sideline, why wouldn't you not throw to him? I get why Darnold so trusts him, but yeah, you're right. Shaheed has a chance to change how defenses play them.
If you're a fan of fantasy football, daily fantasy sports, picking games or just following games on a play-by-play basis, if you can't get to a television set, there is no better app out there than the Sleeper app right now. They are the #1 fastest growing sports app. And if you like games of skill, well, there's no better time to sign up than now. They're just going to give you, just like the graphic says, $20 free just for signing up. You don't even need to make a deposit. They're just going to give you $20 right off the top if you use the promo code FOREVER. But if you want to make a deposit, they're going to match your first one up to $100, 100%. And that is above and beyond the $20 that they're going to give you just to start off with. So check out the Sleeper app. Terms and conditions do apply. Use that promo code FOREVER. Now this word from Manta Sleep Masks. I used to be one of those people that could fall asleep anywhere, anytime. It was awesome. But over the last few years, that's changed. If it's outside noise or neighbors in my building, midnight zoomy cat Olympics, or just the effects of age, it's gotten tougher. For years now, I've had to run a fan for white noise, and I've tried melatonin and sleep aids, but I wake up feeling groggy, and that's no way to start the day. But then I was introduced to the Manta Sound Sleep Mask. And this thing, guys, I'm telling you, this is a game changer. It gives me true 100% blackout and has ultra thin Bluetooth 5.2 speakers built right into the mask. So I can fall asleep to the sound of music, something I've done since I was a kid. And I'm telling you, the sound quality of these speakers honestly blew me away. I was not expecting them to be as good as they are. And now I don't have to deal with earbuds falling out while I toss and turn. Plus, it's got a 20-hour battery life and can be used without the speakers. You simply remove that outer layer held on by Velcro. So if falling asleep at night or just taking a much-needed nap has gotten tougher for you too, check out the Manta Sound Sleep Mask at mantasleep.com. And if you use my promo code FOREVER, they're going to give you 10% off your purchase. So just go to the description of this video, click the link, use the promo code, and enjoy the best sleep you've ever had. I could keep asking you questions about the offense, but we should probably talk about the best unit on this roster and the performance of that defense on Sunday, doing something that we just haven't seen a Seattle defense do against Matt Stafford, Sean McVay in quite some time, and that is slow them down. Just 245 yards, I think. Some of that obviously came because they only needed short fields, but the third down numbers pointed out and Stafford's completion percentage, it made him look mortal when he came into the game flying as high as anyone. I think it was 3 straight games of 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. No one had ever done that before. Oddly enough, at the age of 37, the best version we've seen of Matt Stafford, and yet they really shut that offense down. How did it look and feel in person to watch that game?
Well, first of all, it was really, really telling how they took not only the running game out of the running backs out of the Rams offense, but the entire running backs, even catching passes. McVay has killed them with screen passes to running backs in the past, and they took all of that away. It was Kyren Williams. He got going early, and then they did. And Ernest Jones was talking about how it was just bad run fits. I'm thinking of the third and maybe it was 4th and 1 in the first half where he went for 34 yards down to near the goal line when both Ernest Jones and Leonard Williams overran that play. So they always say it was run fits and just doing your job. And then once they were in the right spots, boom, nothing. Again, the Rams scored just 1 touchdown when they weren't handed the ball deep in Seattle territory. Mm-hmm. In person, I thought it was that I had to double check that John Wolford wasn't a quarterback because Stafford was lawn darting throws. I'm talking the first play of the game. Do you remember the first catch where the receiver had to spin and he fell down because the pass was so bad? Yeah. And Witherspoon got that bogus roughing call because he hit the guy who was on the ground. All you had to do was tap him. He could have avoided the penalty, but it's still – that pass was terrible. It ended up being a completion because the receiver did a Houdini act to turn around and dive at the same time. There were 4 or 5 other – I'm talking 3-4 yard passes that Stafford just dirted at the feet of his receivers. It was like an entirely different quarterback. And that didn't have anything to do with pressure. That first throw of the game didn't have anything to do with pressure. So Stafford was off from the start. And I think that helped Seattle for sure. You're right to lead off with the strength of this team remains the defense. I think Ernest Jones is revolution. He's like an MVP of this team. I still think Devin Witherspoon is the best player on the team. And I think Nick Emanwari has a chance to be the best player on the team. The way McDonald using him is just beginning. it's almost like every week McDonald goes, oh, I can use him to do this too. I can even do this too.
Yeah.
They had him nickel. They had him safety. They had him at outside linebacker. They had him blitzing. They had him in coverage. He's breaking up passes in the flat. He has become more of Kyle Hamilton now that he's been healthy and playing week to week. The most interesting thing the defense did, Dan, in Los Angeles was how they rotated Riq Woolen into a prominent role.
Yeah.
The game started with Witherspoon and Jobe outside as the starters. And then when they went to nickel, they brought Woolen in. But then on the second drive, it was Witherspoon and Woolen as the two starters, and Jobe was out. And they went a long stretch of the game with that. And Jobe became the odd man out, where in previous weeks it had been Woolen. And then, of course, you have Nick Emmanwori. So when you go nickel, it's often Emmanwori. It's been a complete 180 in the middle of the season for Riq Woolen. I mean, the rumors about trade, those are real. Teams were calling, and the Seahawks were trying to shop him. And he heard it. And then we know he would have been benched in Pittsburgh if Witherspoon hadn't gotten hurt the week before. He would have been benched in the middle of the season if Josh Jobe hadn't gotten a concussion. He was a cat with 9 lives, and now all of a sudden on his 9th life, he's flourishing. He made plays on balls in the air in the end zone 2 or 3 times again against the Rams, a couple of times with Devontae Adams one-on-one. He's playing like Kenneth Walker. He's playing for his future. His contract ends in 7 games as well. He has transformed in the last 3 weeks, and McDonald said we're going to see it again in Tennessee. 3 starters playing 2 positions, so there are going to be some Josh Jobe, it looks like, going to lose some snaps.
And yet there are still reps. I think it was the Parkinson touchdown where he could have come over to help, and it seemed like he pulled up and was kind of jogging at it, as Parkinson got close to the pylon. I'll ask you the same exact question that I asked about Kenneth Walker. Does he have a chance to play his way back into their future plans, or in the grand scheme of things, is he just not the ideal type of cornerback that they like to have in this system?
No, I think more than Walker, he has a chance to win himself a job in Seattle here the last 7 games. At that position, the athleticism, the size, the length at that position it's tough to turn your back on that. If he has the productivity of the plays on the ball and he goes without, it's been how many weeks now since he hasn't had a penalty? He was leading the NFL in penalties for almost a season and a half. If he can continue this, I think they're going to take a long, hard look at re-signing him because of how premium that position is in this league. And while you could say, running back, you can find another running back for cheaper, maybe not as elusive as Walker can be at times, you can't find too many 6'4" corners with speed and closing speed on the ball that Woolen has. Yeah.
Tackling still an issue for that defense. What's up with that?
Yeah, it's been like a decade-long issue with this team. It is a problem, and I can go back and preach about this, but they never tackle. Not in preseason, not in training camp, not in the regular season.
They tackle truck tires.
They do. They wrap up truck tires. When they do bring anything to ground, it's with a high jump pad pit on the ground so that they land on the high jump. I get it. The injuries and the contracts that these guys get paid, and then teams don't want to lose guys to practice injuries. There are only 14 padded practices, as you probably know, during a 17-game season by CBA rule now. So I understand it. But the net result is tackling in the league is bad. And this league is so open field now with the spread offenses and the quick pass game and the idea. Basically, most offenses now, the pass game is just an extended glorified run play. It's a 1-2 step drop and a 5-yard pass, and let the receiver. We're paying $20 million to make a guy miss in the open field. And about 60% of the time, that's what happens. That's why you see guys, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, you go down the list of the longest tenured best quarterbacks for decades. They throw the ball 5 yards and let their receivers run for 15 because they break a tackle. So it's not just a Seahawks-specific issue. What is a problem is when they're at the point of attack on running plays like that 3rd and 1 against the Rams when they miss tackles. That's what will kill you, and that's what they have to get better at. Ernest Jones himself missed a couple tackles, and he's probably one of the surest tacklers on the team.
I want to go back because this is the first time we've had a chance to talk in a little bit. Let's go back to the trade deadline a couple of weeks. There was a whole lot of smoke leading up in the last 48, 72 hours before the deadline that perhaps the Seahawks, who did acquire Rashid Shaheed, that was no small move, might have been hunting some bigger game at the deadline. There was talk of Cesar Ruiz from the New Orleans Saints. A lot of talk about Max Crosby and indications that they might have gotten pretty far down the road in some of those discussions before the Raiders decided to pull the plug and try and decide what they want to do next. What were you hearing? Was that smoke? Was there fire behind that smoke?
Yeah, well, they tried. They made calls on them, and the price was ultimately too high. The other problem that happened is after they traded for Shaheed, they only have 4 draft picks for next year right now. Yeah. So they were running out of capital to trade with unless they wanted to get rid of Mafe and Woolen. And what I was told was the market in the league just wasn't high enough to net the players the Seahawks were looking for. Even if they had packaged Mafe and Woolen, they didn't have a draft pick. They didn't have the draft pick capital to add to that. So a team would have to take the Seahawks discards at the time for a frontline player. And that's why it didn't happen. The simplest way to explain it is, Dan, they ran out of inventory. Draft pick inventory to make more deals that could have helped them immediately. The Chiefs in particular were interested in Mafe very late, and that deal didn't come together, again, because of the draft pick compensation. The Chiefs were looked at the cupboard that the Seahawks had, and it was bare. They have a first, a third, and I think it's a sixth right now. John Schneider's going to make more deals to get more than just 4 picks. And, of course, they're hoping for compensation picks. Compensatory picks, we don't know how that's going to settle out, of course, for next year. Because we haven't seen the formulas and all of that yet. And if people say, well, what about if they lose Woolen and they lose Mafe to free agency? Yeah, but that doesn't count until 2026. Right. So the comp picks wouldn't show up till then. So I think they ran out of chips to play in the trade market after they traded a 4th and a 5th for Shaheed.
You wonder how much it might play into it, too, that it sounds like the general consensus about this 2026 draft is that it's not considered a very strong class. Maybe those picks don't carry as much weight as
and we've seen that in the past. Schneider, like the COVID draft, he punted and didn't care about 3 picks. Yeah,
boy, what a great draft that was. I want to ask you a couple of questions that I know my viewers would want to know about because they are constantly asking about these 2 young players. I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now, but it seems even more evident that the longer we go without seeing any activation here or opening his window, are we at the point where it makes more sense to just redshirt essentially Riley Mills, not play him his rookie year, even if he's able to come back in the next few weeks and let his contract toll?
I think so. And we've asked a couple of times about Mills, and they said, McDonald always says, well, he's progressing and he's involved in all the team meetings and he's learning, but it never get the feeling that his return is imminent. Or that they're expecting him to practice anytime soon. I think you're right. If we're about at the point, maybe a week or 2 more, that if he doesn't come back, I think they'll do that. They need more depth at defensive tackle with defensive line, for sure. And every team does, but I thought they were going to add in signing a veteran at the end of training camp at that position. Jonathan Hankins has just unofficially retired. I haven't seen him at all in the facility. I mean, McDonald said he was at meetings during training camp. I'm not quite sure that's true. There's a running joke on the beat that all the beat writers are saying that Jonathan Hankins has retired long ago and back in his home and his ranch in Texas, raising kids and pigs and farmers, whatever he does.
Getting paid, though.
Yeah, he is. This one's on. When I was covering the Raiders back in the day, Reagan Upshaw on the first day of training camp walked up to us in Napa and said, "This season's on the NFL, boys." And he started laughing. And we're like, "What are you talking about?" And later that day, the Raiders announced Reagan Upshaw was on season-ending injured reserve, and Upshaw was very happy to take his check and go home at that point in his career. I haven't seen Hankins at all. Mills, they drafted. That's 2 key pieces to the line, an interior line that they haven't had, and that's why Brandon Peely has been getting the opportunities he's been getting.
Yeah. The other guy, and maybe you can't speak to this because I know you guys don't get to actually watch practice most of the time, and so you don't get to see what the practice squad guys are doing. But I can't go live without someone asking me about Chris Paul, Pooh Paul out of Ole Miss, the 5th-round draft pick of the Rams. They tried to get him to the practice squad. The Seahawks claimed him on waivers. He was a guy they had in for a 30 visit, so that interest wasn't new. Do you have any sense of how they feel about him, how he's performing, how they view him?
None. And you're right. It's because we don't get to see him in practice and we don't see the roles. Is he purely just a scout team player who's just reading cards and running the opponent's plays? I'm getting the sense that's what he's been so far. Yeah. This team does have, though, a recent history, as we know, Dan. McDonald has shown that if you perform, even on the practice squad, if you make plays, if you do everything we're asking you to do, if you are just standing out, you're going to get a shot. And that's how Drake Thomas is in the lineup. That's how Ty Okada is in the lineup. That's how Cody White has caught his first NFL touchdown pass a couple weeks ago. It was on the practice squad or a running scout team that those guys just kept beating starters at their jobs, and then they played. So if Paul would happen to be doing, if we suddenly saw Paul get promoted or elevated for game or whatever, it's because he is beating starters in practices, because the McDonald has a track record of doing that. And every guy in the locker room knows that. And it's a really effective tool for guys who don't seem to be in their plans to suddenly become in their plans. But to answer your question, no, because I'm not watching practices, and once you get in the rhythm of the season, he is so far off the radar. I haven't heard anything.
All right. Most important question I have for you today, because I'll be in Nashville on Sunday. Best place to eat before and or after the game in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh man, there's a great barbecue spot south of downtown in the little knoll. They call it the Gulch, I think, and it's escaping me what the name of it is. The Seahawks actually had a team dinner there the night after I was there last time, that summer trip we had. Oh, man, it's a barbecue spot. I'll have to get it for you. It's in the Gulch. I'm pretty sure they call it the Gulch, just south of downtown, right behind it's the Country Music Hall of Fame, but I call it the Taylor Swift Hall of Fame because they have plastered Taylor Swift all over the outside of the building. Nashville is the best city in the NFL. That week we spent there, I was joking with McDonald when we were in Green Bay for the joint practice there. I said, come on, man, you had two joint practices and had us 5 days in Nashville, and now we're 4 days in Green Bay, Wisconsin. That was a bad trade. I'm lobbying hard for them to do joint practices next August back in Nashville. Broadway, for those who've never been, the music venues on Broadway in Nashville are 3-story. Most of them are 3 levels, right? You have country music, and country music at most of them on 3 levels, but some of them is country, rock, and rap. Some of it's country, DJ, and country.
Wow.
It's fantastic. It really is. Live music.
Has his own bar now, my goodness.
Oh, yeah. A bunch of that. Aldine and those country guys had their own places, and rock guys had their own. Yeah. No matter what time of year I've been there, it's been crazy, mad, wild scene. It doesn't matter. Summer, winter. I'm looking forward to Nashville because it's the unique place in the NFL. You picked a good one to go to.
Is that your favorite away city to travel to, or is there another one?
Well, I'm from Pittsburgh, and I love the new stadium there, and I love the people of Pittsburgh. And my parents live. My dad just passed away, but my parents live in Detroit. My twin sister lives in Detroit. So those aren't the glamour spots, but personally, those are my cities because that's where I'm from. Now that you're mentioning it, I like Baltimore. The Army-Navy game is going to be there. The stadium right downtown in the Inner Harbor. But yeah, Nashville, Green Bay's fun. Green Bay's really cool. It is for football, and you park in the front yard. You pay $20 to park in someone's front yard in Green Bay, or $25 if you want to use their bathroom inside the house. The stadium is just in the middle of a neighborhood. For anyone who's been to Lambeau Field knows what I'm talking about.
The pictures are great.
It'd be like having the Seahawks stadium in Capitol Hill, or no, that's a bad example because it's urban. It'd be like having it out in North Bend. The Seahawks stadium just happens to be in the city of North Bend. That's what Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Lambeau Field's like. But Nashville's, to me, by far the best NFL city.
That would work in North Bend. You got the foothills behind it. It would be gorgeous. A lot more rain out there, though. They'd have to cover that.
The Tasty Freeze right next to the stadium. That would work out, too.
Absolutely. Well, Greg, it's always great to have you on. I know you're a busy guy covering this team, and I really appreciate you coming on and lending some of your outstanding insight. And everybody can read your stuff on the TNT, and also you still doing some radio time?
I am. KJR every 7 o'clock every weekday morning. Thanks for that. Yeah. Thanks for catching me on a Tuesday. I'm happy to talk to you anytime, Dan.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Greg. We'll see you next time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I wasn't kidding. I have to hold myself back whenever I talk to Gregg. I could have easily talked to him for another hour. So many questions to get to, but have to respect his time, right? Some of you have reached out to me to let me know you're going to be at the game in Nashville. If you are, let me know. If we have a chance to have a sip of beer together, maybe raise our beer glasses in toast to our beloved Seahawks, we will do that if given the opportunity. And if you're thinking about going, my goodness, tickets are easy to get. We were able to grab a couple for in the upper bowl, obviously, but for $18 a piece. So check that out if you can. In the meantime, if you would do all the things, subscribe to the channel, check out nwforever.com. All the other ways that you can support me are listed and linked down below in the description. And that QR code right there allows you to buy me a coffee or a beer if you can't do it in Nashville. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the support. Check out Gregg's material as well. I know Tacoma News Tribune, it's behind a paywall. It is the best money you'll ever spend. He is one of the best in the business, in the NFL, out there doing it, covering a beat on a daily basis. I'm Dan. This is Seahawks Forever. Forever and always go Hawks. Thanks for watching.